Hello all, and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is edition 118 for November 23rd, 2022. Today we're going to talk about an interesting topic, another in our series on integrating with anything. So we're going to be integrating with the YouTube video API. Before we get to that, let me introduce myself. My name is Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plant an App. This is an event we do for our community every Wednesday this hour, and it's just an event where we focus mostly on low code and do hands-on low coding. So you'll also hear some stories and tips from our team and from our community. We invite you to be our guest speaker. If you have a topic that you think would be of interest to the Plant an App community, let us reach out, let us know. We'll set you up and take advantage of your knowledge. All of our past editions are recorded on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantanap, and you can use that QR code to get into that as well. So there we now have 117 hours of very good training content. Today's agenda will be pretty straightforward. I'm going to present a couple of things from the trenches of support, and then we'll turn it over to Jim Everett to do our hands-on low-code development with YouTube. You can interact with us in a number of ways. There's a chat window. You can do Q&A. You can raise your hand, and after it's all over with, you can do feedback. So pick any of those directions, and we'll be happy to work with you on that. So from the trenches, just a couple of stories here that I wanted to demonstrate. We had a question on our community about sending email and being able to attach more than 5 files. And we have another question about controlling the user login error message. Both of these are pretty easy to demonstrate, and I'm going to talk first about the send email action. So I've prepared a form here that has 2 files that we're going to want to attach and send to an email. If you take a look at the design of the form, it's pretty straightforward. We have 2 single file uploads and then a button that is for sending email. When we take a look at that, there's just one action inside of it on click handler to send an email. When you look at a send email action and you're working in forms, you get to specify things like where you want it to go. So I'm going to be sending it to this address. You can set a subject and a body of the attachment of the email. But down here at the bottom, there's a way to attach files. So there's you can attach from fields. The action automatically knows about the fields that are present on your form. And so you can attach it this way. And so it's very straightforward to attach files, but we've only provided up to 5. If you want more than 5, or if you want to do it instead of choosing a field name, you want to do it from a token, you can attach any file that you have access to. And it tells you you can, it must be a relative URL relative to the portal home. So we just, in this case, used this demonstrates the technique. You use the name of the file. So I have these 2 controls, file 1 and file 2, and it's just we use the relative URL. Again, if we take a look at these single file upload controls, it tells you that on submit, it creates these tokens. And so there's a relative URL, an absolute URL, a file path, these different things that you can access and do things with. But I'm just using the relative URL parameter as part of this token to attach it. So we specify file 1 relative URL, file 2 relative URL. This will automatically, whatever gets attached is going to be sent out on the email. So this would be a good use case, for example, if you're asking someone to submit a resume or some pictures and you're accepting a very specific number of pictures, but it's more than 5, you can just stack them there on the URL. So that is how you can attach more than 5. And so we're glad for that question that came up on community. The other one was about controlling the user login. I have a form here that is designed as a user login. It collects a username and a password. And the idea here is that you want to be able to do a custom form and log people in on the system. I'm going to access this page on in an incognito window, and I'm going to fill in bad information, A, B. So it's a bad username and password. And by default, you get an error that looks like this. There was an error with the form. Please contact the administrator. And really, the error relates to the fact that it's a bad username and password. So this is a little bit misleading. There is an error with the form, but the message isn't very good. So we can take a look at the design and fix that really quite easily. We look at the login test form. Very straightforward. I've used a text field for the username. I've used a password field for the password, which gives us the dots instead of, it doesn't actually reveal the password on the screen. We have a login button, and again, just a single action on the login button. Now I've got one here that for testing, I've tested our obsolete action, but there's only one that's active here. This one is not active because it has a false on the condition. It won't actually work. So we have one action that's going on. It's the user login action. With this action, you specify what username you want to log in and the password you want to log in. And I'm providing that by linking again to the fields on the form, so username and password. So this is the design of the form and the design of the action, and the one that returns back this bad action, this bad error message, if they don't log in. If they do log in, have a good credentials, they'll just go on to the next action, no problem. So there's a feature here that I don't use very often, and Patrick actually reminded me about it. Patrick is taking notes on our call today, and that you can say something like, the username and password is not valid. We can save this change to the form. And so now if we try the same thing, again, logging in incognito, use the same values, that error message is displayed instead of the ugly error message that we were seeing earlier. So that's just a quick reminder if you bump into that feature or other error messages that the users are typing and getting that some form of error with the form, you can make that error message friendly. Okay. So those are a couple of things that came in from the trenches this week, and so useful to know. Beyond that, we have our current version is version 1.23 of Plant an App. We've previously released 3 hotfixes, and this week we're releasing 2 more. The first is that we have a field in our forms where the number field, the field type is a number field, and we have recently added a minimum value, and we previously had a maximum value. So now you can specify that you want to accept a number, and perhaps you want the value between 10 and 20, whatever the use case is for your system. Previously, if you set a minimum value of 10 and you tried to type a 5, it validated it too quickly. It really didn't work well. So now we fixed that. Minimums and maximums work as you would expect. So that's a useful and change if you're using number field. The other one is in our big story, we are providing autocomplete. So being able to type the name of a token, putting in the bracket, and it lets you, helps you fill in, autocomplete that token, knowing what tokens are available for you to use. So that's part of our big story that we're doing. As a reminder, we've done that in the automation section of our product, and it will roll out over time to all of the various sections of our product. We're getting it right in automation and then moving on to other areas. And so it didn't work in this one area when you were doing a partially update entity action, it wasn't expanding. So we've corrected that. Great. So those are the tips from support today. There's a couple of things I would encourage you. There's another meeting that we do every week, which is the low-code campfire, and we do that on most Fridays. In the United States, this Friday is Thanksgiving, so we will not hold one this week. But take a look in the links for the email that invited you to this webinar. You can sign up for those, and we do the low code. We will do it again starting next Friday at 10 a.m. Central Time, the same hour. It's a good meeting to be part of because it's interactive. We have a great group of people that show up and help each other with low code. We hear about problems, and oftentimes we hear about solutions in the same time. There was this last week, there was a great discussion, for example, on the way to control your URL or hide information on a URL. So instead of passing sensitive or potentially sensitive information like a customer number or a record number that you don't necessarily need people to know about, instead of passing that on the query string, it was all about how to pass it in another way behind the scenes. So there's these great techniques that come up, and there's an opportunity then to learn from your peers. So do engage with us on that one. We have some links, which I will post in a moment to the chat when I turn this over to Jim Everett. But you can register in advance for Campfire. You can get take a look at our recordings on YouTube, take a look at the community portal. There's opportunities there to post questions and get help from the community. You can do feature requests, and I'll just let you know there's a new thing coming on feature requests, and that is the ability to sponsor a feature request. So while we take all the feature requests seriously, if there's something that you need sooner than later, you'll be able to sponsor them there if they're important to you, and that'll move them up onto the top of the stack and give you a say in how they're developed. So that's a new thing. That should be coming in the next week or so. And then there is the opportunity for live help on the community. So we run several sessions every week where you can visit with somebody from the support team or a technical success manager and ask your question directly, something more in depth. Finally, you can give us feedback. So there's some great links. They'll be posted in the chat here in just a minute. And with that, I am going to ask Jim Everett, our head of education and skills, to step forward. He's prepared a great demo. It's a continuation of something we started a couple of weeks ago. We needed this internally for a project to build our knowledge base. He's going to tell you about that, but we're extracting information about YouTube videos through YouTube API. So Jim, please take it away.
Thank you, Dale. Let me see if I can grab the correct screen here and share it. So
perfect.
Yes, as Dale said, this is in some ways a follow-on, or was teased in a previous low-code cafe, where we talked about the knowledge base, and the vision behind the knowledge base is of a single search experience which brings together the various different sources of information that we've made available to our users in the community, a single search experience, and using common taxonomy, common terms for you to be able to search across all of these sources, and to provide a single interface. Of the sources we discussed, we have the documentation source, we have the academy. We're still planning to release the opportunity for the community to contribute content, but as Dale mentioned at the beginning of the cafe, the cafe itself is a vast resource now, with many hours of useful content, and we wanted to index this and make it part of the knowledge base. The most straightforward way of doing that was to extract the descriptions and index those. And this presentation is based on the journey I went through to try and do that, but hopefully in a generalized format that will allow you to do something similar. So the agenda is to a quick look at the video API, the data API that Google have released. We'll step through creating an API key. So you can access the API using OAuth or a key in many cases. We're going to use the API key as it's the simplest way of doing things. We're going to test the connection, and we're going to build some workflows that pull the data from the API and put them into an entity. So the basic scenario we're exploring is we want to get the most recently uploaded videos. We want to iterate through that list, and for each one we want to download the metadata into a video entity that we've created. So we'll just have a quick look at at what we're aiming for. Here's the video entity, and we've just got some basic properties that we're wanting to collect, which is the title, the description, the URL of the video, thumbnail, and the date that it's published. So that's the data we're wanting to collect. So the API, so it's, as I say, it's part of the data API. Google makes available a very complete documentation on its APIs. So as you can see, there are a number of methods in here. We're going to be using search and videos in this example, and in each case you can go in and it'll give you an example, documentations, and a chance to run the experiment and run the method actually in the interface. So we're going to use this API Explorer, as they call it, to test the request and actually to view the response. So the first one we want to do is to have a look at the search, and we go through to the search. See here. So it says
I'll just mention, Jim, I'm putting the URLs out on the chat in case anybody wants to grab these.
Right, thanks. So in this case, for the most basic search, we're going to be looking at the channel. So we need the channel ID. We need to say what part we bring back. In this case, there is only one choice, and that's snippet. We want to say we're going to bring back 5 results, and we want to order them by date, which by default will bring us back the most recent 5. So let's just go now. So go down here. Oops, come on, grab it. There we go. So we can execute that. It'll ask me to use my Google identity to allow the interaction. And so there we go. So if we go to HTTP, which is the closest to the format we're going to use in Planting Up, which is this GET, we can get we can see the request we send, and we can also get the response. So here's the format in a more readable form. So part is snippet. We need the channel ID. We need the maximum number of results. And we want the order by date, and we put in our API key. So now the question is, where do we get the channel ID? So what's the simplest way of doing that? The simplest way I found was to use the videos list method with a video that we know is one of the Planting App videos. So here we go. There's a video ID. You can use any of them from the channel. We just execute that, and it asks me again for some odd reason. And here we can get the get the video, the channel ID. So you can do that with any channel. So now we have the channel ID. We can go through and fill this out. So we've got the full request with our channel ID. Next thing is, how do we get the API key? So I'm going to switch browsers because I'm going to use a different browser to step through this process. Where is it gone? Shit. So this is just my personal Google account that I've got logged in, going to the console at cloud.google.com. And the first thing I'm going to do for this is create a new project. So we're going to call this low-code cafe test API. It doesn't matter what you call it. And we'll create this new project. It takes a moment to create the project. You could use an existing project, but it's easier to use easier to create a new one. So now we're into the we're working in the new project that we've created, and what we want to do is we want to go to the API section. Come on, wake up. So at the moment we don't have any APIs created, so we would need to start and pick an API. We want the YouTube API, and as I say, it's the YouTube data API that we want. Is this the one? Yep. And we want to enable this API. This means that now for this project, the one API it can access is this data API. Still, we don't have a key. So in order to create a key, we need to create credentials. We're going to be accessing public data because we're looking at descriptions and title, thumbnail of videos that are public. And here is our key. So we can use that key to access the API.
Thanks for showing all the steps to do that, Jim. I know it's helpful when somebody's trying to do this kind of effort to be able to just walk through the videos and see all the clicks. So it's somewhat of a maze sometimes.
Well, as long as Google don't change it again.
Well, they will eventually, but this will be good for a few years.
Oh yes, yes. You'll notice here we've got a flag there. So let's go in and look at the key. Now, what Google suggests is that you restrict the API so that it can't be used across the whole of on all websites by everyone. So let's restrict it to being just from a website. And in fact, we'll only allow it to be used from the plant and app website. So this one can only be used now /* from applications that are hosted hosted by plant and app, and we'll apply this restriction. And we'll apply it to the YouTube data API. So not only do we have we created a key, we've now made sure that this key is one that we can use from this particular site. And if you were going from your own hosted environment, you would change the HTTP referrer.
I'm sure some of these keys, some of these APIs come with costs and stuff, so it's worth locking down to make sure that people aren't hijacking your account.
That's true. The costs, but also it's the way that they log who's doing what. So you want to make sure that you are the only person who's doing that thing. So there we go. That's the process of creating the key, and we'll go back to. So there's a summary. It does prompt you to do the consent screen, but it's not needed in this case. So here we go. So our full request now has all the parts. We have the channel ID and we have the key. So we're able to start building. Now the other thing we were able to do from the search was to see from the API Explorer, we were able to call the search, and we were able to get an example of the sort of response that's going to come back that our Plantinet workflow has to deal with. And it's useful there to have a look at the structure of what comes back. So here I've got a couple of screenshots here of the response, but with it collapsed, because when you use the pass JSON into tokens action, it works level by level. And in this case, we can see, at the top level, we can see that we can access directly things like next page token or region. Items, though, is collapsed, and you'll see the square bracket there. That square bracket means that it's an array, and you would have to run another parsing action on that. So if we open up items, we can see we've got this repeating array, so a list of items, and we would have to parse it again. In that, we've got the ID, which is one of the things that we're looking for from the from our response, which is the ID of the video. And if we drill down into that again, we'll see that's a group of values with video ID. Curly brackets, so we don't need to reparse. We can use what's called the dot notation, and we can go ID dot video ID. So now we've got the whole of our request, and we have an understanding of how the response is structured. We can begin our development. One of the things I like to do for this sort of thing is build it up incrementally, and I'll use a very simple entity to capture results from the workflow. And that's the wrong link. So go back to entities. So I create a simple key value pair entity. I'll just have a quick look at the structure, which is just, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that. Clicked on the wrong one. So a field called key and a field called value. And this is quite handy, so you can drop content, you can drop tokens into it and responses into it, and easily see what we're getting. So let's build this up slowly through a series of workflows. So here's our first workflow. We've got inputs, and it's handy to do this passing in things like your API key and your channel ID as an input. Makes it easier to update, and also for workflows to communicate with each other. And in this instance, what we'll simply call the search, which is what we got from the API Explorer. And here is our here is our request using the same structure that we saw in the API Explorer.
So I didn't see, this is a get, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you choose an HTTP method. This is the server request action, a URL, a method, pass it some data, and it'll call that API.
Yes. So yeah, I could. No, I was thinking of jumping back to the screen. So let's see. Yes. So here we go. So there's the get part. There's the URL, and there's our group of values that we've got. Using the tokens that we created, and we say we want to call this search JSON, so we give the output a name. I'm going to pass that into tokens, just a simple run through. So we say we want to pass this token, and we want to call what comes out search tokens. And to make sure everything's working nicely, we use a create new KVP action, which is create a new record in the entity. We'll give it a name, and we'll just use that that section that we're interested, the search token, which is the name of the token, and the section of the response we want to look at, which is items. So let's just run that and see what we get. Okay, perhaps I might change that. So there we go. And if we look at our entity, so we can see it's coming through. There we get it. We see that the items is our big chunk of JSON. So that's just what we want. So let's make more sense of that. So we've got the same structure here up to pass into tokens, but this time we want to take the items that we've just looked at, so search token items, and we want to turn it into a list. So here we go. We're going to call it items list, and then because it's a list, we will execute actions on every item in that list. And again, we're going to do our create KVP. And this time we want to look at the ID, video ID. So using the dot notation from the output, we saw that each item has a section called ID in it, and within that it had video ID. So that's what we're going to output. So before I run that, I'm just going to get rid of all these. So right. So zip test. And here we go. So it shows that the search is working, we're getting everything back. So let's go to we've got our metadata item. So let's this time just go through, and rather than doing a create KVP, we'll do the full thing, create a new video, all the metadata. So we know from looking at the structure, there's a section called snippet with title in it. So that's what we want. Snippet description, that's what we need. We can construct the link to the video using the video ID. All the different thumbnails follow a similar format, so we're able to nest it down. What is it? 4 levels here. And we've got a published at value. So we'll just spit that out. And look at our videos. Wrong link. Wrong link.
I wanted to mention, Jim, I'm glad that you showed a different debugging technique each developer has a different technique that it's, you know, I tend to put a lot of things in the output result, but when, in your case, doing the key value pair, it makes sense if you're extracting a lot of data and you want to look at it, just recording that and making it available to look at is another neat technique.
Absolutely, especially if you find you're having to go back. This is the results when I know where I'm going down the path. When you're fighting your way through, having a log of all the different things you've tried with timestamps and sequence. If you find you've taken a wrong turn somewhere, you can get back to where you came from. So here we go. This looks very promising. One problem, though, you'll notice here that there's an ellipsis on the description. Now, I didn't do that. That's Google being very helpful and truncating the description. So that's not going to work, is it? So we need another approach. We need another way of accessing that information. So we're going to use two workflows now, because the search method will give us the truncated version. But if we use the method, so here we go. We're using the video method with a known ID of a video. Execute that. It asks me again. For some reason, there we go. And if we scroll down here, is that the right one? So description. Go. So we got a lot more description there. In fact, there's a screenshot. So if we use the video method, we can. This is the way we can get the whole of the description back. So we have to use two different calls.
Talking about having to follow the path down. You don't know when you start out exactly what you're going to get from somebody else's API, and then when you find it short, then it sends you looking for the next piece.
That's right, absolutely. So what we have is we've now got import new video workflow, which uses the video API. So we've got our inputs. So the ID of the video and our API key. So we don't have, so it's just passed in from the parent. As Dale, you mentioned about output tokens, we're setting up a token here that we're going to use for output, and we're going to initialize it with a value of 0. So we can use it later. So here's our server request. So going to the videos method with a get and passing in our values. We pass it into tokens. We have to pass it into a list again, because the structure is nested inside items, rather irritatingly. But this is because on the videos API, you can pass in a number of video IDs and it will get you them all back. So that's something to watch out for when you're looking at the response. And then we execute execute actions on each item in the response, even though there's only going to be one. And that's quite similar, but not entirely the same, because the response has got a slightly different structure. And when it creates the video, creates the new record, a new entity we've got an output token, and we're going to update the response from this workflow with the output, as long as it's been successful. So now we've got this workflow will pass back the video entity response, or it will pass a 0 if it's failed, or if this is skipped. So we're able to do something with that. Let's give that a quick test. Video ID. I need a video ID. Where's it gone? I had a video ID. Yeah, there it is. Oh, I've got the key as well. I'll not do that. I'll just call it from the other one. That would be easier. So this is our workflow to call the other one. So again, we've got our inputs, here's our API key number to get, and process. We're going to keep track of how many videos are added, and we're also going to do a list of the videos, the IDs of the videos that have been added. So we'll do our search, which is the one we had before. So that will get back our response. We'll pass it into tokens, create a list, and now for each of the items in the list, we're going to execute the import a single video workflow that we just looked at. So the input fields, there's the video ID, and we're passing on the API key, and we've got a token to capture what's being sent back, and we're going to update some of our tracking tokens. So we'll add 1 to our count, and we'll take the ID from the ID of the one that's just been called and add it to our list, so we can see those being added on. So let's see what happens if we hit this. So rather than make this a bit bigger, maybe we'll lay out a bit better. Rather than doing 5, we'll just do 3, run. And here we go. So 3 videos have been added, and there's the IDs of them. So we can see that's running successfully. So we've got our multi-workflow solution now. So if we know that we always want to pull in 5 videos, we can use this workflow to pull in our 5 videos and get all of the metadata in. But what if we're not quite sure how many we need to pull in? We've got to have a way of arbitrarily pulling in a different number of videos. Now, perhaps we want to vary the number of videos that we pass in. Perhaps we wanted to keep, well, we could keep looping until we've loaded all of the videos. The one thing to be aware of is that there are, as Dale hinted at, Google does have quota limits on the number of API calls you can make. So you probably don't want to run this sort of looping too long, but you could loop through until a certain number of videos have been loaded, or you find one that you've already downloaded. By each time you're looking at the response from the search, you compare that with what you've already processed. So the scenario will depend on your particular use case, but what we're going to demonstrate here is how you use the new page token and how we can use a repeating action. The new page token means that the results coming back will be paged. Without the new page token and setting the order to date, you'll get the for example, 5 most recent ones, pass in the next page token that's generated, you won't get the first 5, you'll get the next 5, and so on.
And this is really a pretty common method of how APIs are structured. If there's a lot of information, they don't want to just give you a big dump of all their information. It's problematic. So they give you a page full of results and a mechanism to get to the next page. And so YouTube.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. A very, as you say, a very common way of doing it. So here we go. Here's our here's the search that will loop depending on whether it gets a new page token. So we've added an input token which can hold a new page token. We've added a split here because the request is slightly different. Depending on if you have a new page token, unsurprisingly, it's page token, it's new page token. That's the only difference. So otherwise it's the same. It passes the tokens, passes the response into tokens. The new step here is that it gets the new page token and can pass that back in the outputs for use later. So we've got new page token as an output. Otherwise, it calls the import workflow or the import new video workflow each time. So let's give an example. Let's try that. And again, we'll drop it down to 3. So that we've added 3. We can grab our new page token. And this time, pass in the new page token, run it again. And those of you with a good memory will realize those are a different 3. And so on. So we see if we've now got it so that we're able to pass in the new page token, it will loop through and give us a different batch of results using the paging that we've requested. So we need something to call that. So this will be the grandparent of our import new video. So this is a top level video. Workflow, not video, workflow. So again, set that up with the passing in the values. So we really only have to change, if we need to change them, we only change them at the top level workflow, and it will percolate all the way through. We'll set the batch size, we'll set the maximum number of iterations, because as I say, we don't want it to run on, and we've got a value there we can use as our limit. We've got some reporting tokens coming out, which is the number of iterations that have been completed and the number of videos added. Otherwise, it's fairly straightforward. Now, and again, I think this is where different developers will have different approaches. Here, I've created at the workflow level tokens for the new page token, for tracking the total added and the iterations completed, and also a utility token here called do loop, which I've set to 1. Now here, repeat until action. So we're going to repeat the batch of actions, or this stack of actions, until the maximum iterations is reached, or until this do loop token does not equal 1. So we'll execute the search download, which is our workflow. Initially we'll send in a blank new page token, and we'll get back the number of videos added and the new page token. We'll update our tracking tokens here, so we'll add the number of iterations completed, we'll add the number of added, and we'll also update our new page token with the value that's come back. And finally, we've got a bit of logic here that says, has the total number of videos added, is that now greater to the number that I'd set as the maximum? If so, change the token do loop to 0. There are other ways of doing it, but that's my habit. It's very
clean way to do that, and depending on your language, that whole do loop, do while, it's a good demonstration.
Yeah. So let's give this a whirl. It's got the API key, we've got a batch size, and integer is 5. Let's make the batch size a bit smaller, and we'll go for 7. So there we go. We downloaded 9 videos. We got in 3 iterations, and if all is well, if I can find the wretched thing, we go to videos. We should have a nice batch here. All of the videos that have just been added, loaded in.
Full descriptions.
Full descriptions and everything as required. It's not going to let me go and do that. So there we go. That demonstrates how using the new how to manage the new, or a way of managing the new page token, and using a stack of or a sequence of 3 workflows to talk to each other, to orchestrate this process, and pull them back. So where could we go from here? Probably, in production, you'd want to add some error handling and reporting. So at the moment, if there's an error anywhere, the whole thing will stop. You probably want to put it, set it up so that it would gracefully skip errors and continue running while reporting. You could hook this up to an automation so that every day, every week, or whatever the top level one is run. This is how we've got it for the knowledge base. It's every day it will check for any new videos added and automatically load them in. You can include conditions, checking to see if the video's already been downloaded, all those sorts of things. So those are the sorts of enhancements that you may want to consider when you're looking at something like this. The other sorts of things we could do, we could get more metadata, so we could pull back comments on videos. We could look at playlists. In the first low-code cafe, we'll be talking about the knowledge base. There was a question asked about transcripts, or which Google refers to as captions in the API. We could do that. Unfortunately, that's one of the methods that requires an OAuth authentication. So it would mean restructuring the current code, but that would certainly be possible. But hopefully that's a demonstration of how you can go about building up this sequence of workflows that will allow you to call not just this API, but as Dale mentions, it's quite a common model for APIs. So hopefully it will be something that you can reuse in other contexts.
So I'm going to put on, if there's any questions, now's a great time to ask, but I'm going to also put the video, the first episode where we did this was, where we did the first part of the knowledge base was episode 116. So that's just back 2 weeks. I put that on the links as well. And then if there's any questions, now's a great time to ask. We just get a thank you from Mark, and you are absolutely welcome. And so any last minute questions? Otherwise, we will play our our theme music. We don't have theme music. What? Somebody help us out. I'm bad at the audio part of it.
There's enough bad theme music on YouTube. We don't need to add to this.
Very good. All right. With no questions, Jim, just want to thank you for presenting that. I think it's very useful. It's always good to see how other APIs work. And let's see. And I've shared a screen with nothing on it. Let's not do that. I'm looking for my if we don't have theme music, at least I have a bumper slide here. So cool. Good content. Thanks for presenting that. I know it takes a lot to prepare, so very good. Again, low-code Campfire not going on this Friday, but we will see you again right here for the next episode of the Low-Code Cafe. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.